And we are back, baby, with another reflection on the Daily Vedantic. And today's reflection is complete with, and due to popular demand from a few weeks ago when I did this, played a bit of music live while recording the episode. Doing it again, and we'll see if I can maintain my train of thought while adding music, which is tuned to 528 hertz, which is an alpha brainwave. This is entirely too much information for anyone that is listening to this. But if you tune the music that you're playing slightly higher than conventional music, you can induce an alpha brainwave state of mind that allows for creative lateral thinking and decreases. It's very conducive to decreasing stress naturally, just by giving the mind something to anchor to, while the intellect gets to explore deep concepts. It is one of my favorite ways to record philosophy that I release under the name Open State on Instagram and Spotify and Apple Music and all that, and do a handful of live shows here in LA. And it's so obvious to me that if you can add really, really nice tonal music behind a message, then it can potentially increase the receptivity to it. So we're going to try that out live like I did a few weeks ago, and people seem to dig it, wrote in with DMs of liking it. So we'll try this experiment out again and see how it goes. And then we'll abandon the experiment if it messes with my train of thought, which this whole podcast is just an experiment. So why not experiment within the experiment? And today's reflection, and the thing that I've been thinking about a lot lately, is one of my favorite principles of the entirety of the philosophy of Vedanta. And that is, it comes from the 18th chapter of the Gita. And it's this concept that which is like nectar in the beginning is like poison in the end. That which is like nectar in the beginning is like poison in the end. And that which is like poison in the beginning is like nectar in the end. What does that mean? I've talked about it on the podcast before. And like I said, it's one of my favorite principles within the philosophy of Vedanta. And another term for the Vedantic philosophy is Sanatana Dharma, which means eternal principles. This principle is so practical because it highlights the fact that our comfort, our preferences, the initial sweetness of something could very well be the sign that it is actually not good for us long term. This interplay and this paradox between comfort and discomfort comes up often within the philosophy of Vedanta. There is the concept of titiksha, which we've talked about before, which is essentially a love of discomfort in service of those around us. Not just putting up with discomfort, but cultivating a love of that discomfort when it is in service of those around us. Example would be someone coming to stay at your house, a house guest, and you give them the best room. Not just putting up with it, but being engaged with the enthusiasm and joy of that service. This is related within this concept from the 18th chapter. It's related because this interplay between comfort and discomfort. It's outlined explicitly within this principle of that which is like nectar in the beginning is like poison in the end. And that which is like poison in the beginning is like nectar in the end. It's explicitly outlined that that which is comfortable in the beginning will minimize the comfort in the end. Sit on the couch for an hour, pretty sweet. It's relaxing, comfortable. 6 weeks, probably going to lead to some distress in the body. A year, 2 years, and you start to self-destruct. The canonical example that's often given in the modern talks around this principle is you go to the gym. It's hard in the beginning, and then it is a joy, an absolute joy in the end. What's interesting here is that it's almost so simple. So simple that you could write it down on a napkin and live by this principle that the more discomfort that we can put up with, the more comfort we enjoy. If we can cultivate an appreciation, almost a pursuit of that which is uncomfortable for us, that which is like poison in the beginning. On the other side, we start to crave it. Notice I'm not saying is poison, but like poison. But even in the example of poison, you have take a little bit of poison each day, a little bit of anti-venom, and a little bit of vaccine, and you actually inoculate yourself from that venom, that virus, that poison. But again, it's not meant to be a pursuit of all things that are poison. That would be leaving your intellect, your analytical, discerning mind, discerning equipment at the door. But to cultivate and employ the analytical equipment. To recognize that, okay, this feels really, really good in the beginning. This ice cream, this relationship, this drug. This experience, this ambition, this third coffee. Maybe I should take some elbow room from this enjoyment and recognize that maybe there's a price for this on the other side. To say it again in the most obvious way that it's so obvious that it's so rare to see it stated, but if you can put up the more discomfort that we can put up with, the more comfort we're always in. If you can put up with the in-laws, the screaming 2-month-old, the 1 hour walk a day to get your body moving, early morning reflection time that grounds your entire day on a foundation of clarity. The more comfort you're constantly in. But the opposite is true as well. The less discomfort you can put up with, the more discomfort you're always in. Walking around like a raw nerve, sensitive to everything and trying to get away from anything that causes discomfort. And you're in a state of constant agitation, a state of constant discomfort. And the practical side of this reflection, and why I've mentioned it a few times on the podcast, it's one of these things, these knowledge bombs you can't unhear, where you start to experience something extremely pleasurable, perhaps sensual, extreme comfort, and your discerning intellect jumps in and says, is this going to last? Or is perhaps bitterness, disappointment, poison on the other side? Similarly, you interact with something that's really hard in the beginning, really uncomfortable. But you stay committed to it, maybe a few days in a row, maybe a few weeks, and you start to cultivate a love for it. Waking up early, hitting the gym, having those honest conversations with coworkers, with friends, with family members, you start to crave that sweetness on the other side of those. And you start to have a natural aversion to the poison on the other side, not having those conversations, of sleeping in, of indulging in this or that. You start to have an aversion to what used to be pure pleasure, because now you recognize it's not pure pleasure and it has quite the price. That cultivation of comfort and increasingly more and more discomfort relegates us to more and more comfort that we continually find ourselves in. That is today's reflection on the Daily Vedantic. We'll see you next time.